explain to the world that doesn't understand, because I understand how a gay man can have a baby, but I didn't understand how you could have two different babies coming within like a few months of one another. Like twins, I get. These are not exactly twins. Explain what's happening.
Yeah, so let me preface this all by saying this is a little confusing. And even as one of the guys involved in this situation, it is a little confusing. And I've had to have a lot of talks with fertility people and with doctors and with all sorts of people to make some sense of this. But I should also say, Megyn, I'm not a biologist, so you're going to have to work with me here when I'm giving you some basics on how babies are born. But generally speaking, women have eggs and men have sperm. When these two things meet each other, you then get an embryo, which eventually, of course, becomes a baby. There's my husband, David, and I. And yes, we also have the same name, which people think is hilarious. But in essence, what we did do is we got one egg donor. And when you get an egg donor, you get a certain amount of eggs. Sometimes you get a lot of eggs. Sometimes you get just one egg. Sometimes you get no eggs. And actually, you would probably find it very interesting that in the course of COVID, there was a huge problem. There were two problems actually related to surrogacy. They were finding, at least our doctor, who's one of the best in the world, was finding that the quality of eggs was not as good as usual, which they couldn't really find any scientific evidence for. They need a lot of time, obviously, to research that. That he could really only chalk up to general stress that was going on with the women's bodies. And then they had another problem related to surrogacy, which is that the pool of women who generally are surrogates, they tend to lean a little more conservative. And actually, a lot of them, even those who are willing to be surrogates for same-sex couples, they tend to be a little more religious. And that pool of women, many of them did not want to get vaccinated, but the governing body of whoever handles the surrogacy situation, they wanted the surrogates to be vaccinated. So you had a low quality of eggs, and then you had women who were generally the surrogates, a high percentage of them who did not want to get vaccinated. So there was a huge problem in the last 2 years related to surrogacy. But to directly answer your question, the two boys that we'll be having, and they are boys, it is not, that is a biological reality that they are male. It is not something that we can choose or they can choose. They come from the same eggs, so the same biological mother. And then one of them is from my sperm and one of them is from David's sperm. And then we have two surrogates. So one will be born.
How did that happen?
How does what happen?
Yeah, because normally you find one surrogate and you're like, great, here are the, whatever. I know it's not her eggs, but you basically are like, here are the embryos. Could you please carry one or two to term? And she's like, sure. Right? That's how generally surrogacy works. So how did you guys decide you were going to have two different babies and two different surrogates at once?
So what happened was, well, a few things happened. Well, first off, they really don't do twins or multiple pregnancies as much as they used to. It's considered a higher risk pregnancy. And although usually twins is not a real risk to the kids, to the babies, or to the mother, it is considered a higher risk pregnancy. There is some degree there. So there are less surrogates that are willing to do twins, which we sort of knew that we wanted to have two anyway. So that was one issue. But then what happened was, over the course of the couple of years that we've been trying this, there were a couple of miscarriages involved, and we realized that, the clock is ticking. I'm 45 years old. I want to be able to play catch with these kids. I want them to see when I'm in the WNBA, as I said earlier. So
with your penis.
So basically what happened was, when the first one was a confirmed pregnancy and we were, as enough weeks in to feel comfortable with that, we said, let's just keep going, because we didn't know, is the second one going to take 3 more years? And then by chance, the second one took, and here we are. So I've got till August, but I've had a pretty good run, Megyn. 45. I've done what I wanted basically when I wanted to do it, and it's time for that next phase.
Well, I mean, your life will, of course, change dramatically, and especially having two at once, your free time is going to go away like that. You'll be shocked at how tired you are all the time. I mean, I can speak to this, having become a mother at 38, and then I had a second at 40, and then I had my third at 42, and all I could think was, there's a reason God cuts you off. He knows. You can't. I don't have it in me. And when they're little, they're so needy. It's like every second they need you to have eyes on them and so on. And, if you want to be a present parent, you want it too, even though not every moment is ideal. Okay, so 2 boys. And what do you, I know this is sort of a weird question, but why did you want to have kids? Why was it important to you? What do you hope will happen to you, to your life?
Yeah. Well, first off, I'm completely happy to talk to you about this personally or professionally. We happen to do a lot of the same stuff that we do privately, we do on camera, which can be a little weird sometimes, but there's really nobody I'd rather discuss this with. And there's a lot of issues around it that I'm happy to get into as well. You know, there were a couple things that were happening. First off, you know, I'm 45, as I said. So when I grew up, especially first, I struggled. I was with my sexuality. I was in the closet for a long time. I never envisioned a future for myself. That really is the truth. I never thought of a future. I didn't think of a family, either married to a woman or a man or anything. I just lived. That's just what it was. It's hard to really fully understand in retrospect, but I just kind of lived as each day would come and go, and that was it. When I met David, things started to change a little bit, and he is a little bit younger than me. So when he was growing up, you know, it was sort of becoming obvious that gay people would be allowed to be married. It was a little more normal to be gay. You know, when I was a kid, or younger at least, in the 80s and the 90s, there were no role models to look at. You know, you had Paul Lynde from the 70s on Hollywood Squares, or like there was only sort of these over-the-top clowns, or Harvey Fierstein or whatever. And I'm not even judging these people, but there were things, it just had nothing to do with who I was or how I behaved. And yet there was this other part of me that somehow connected with that. David grew up in a world that was really changing, where it became sort of mainstream to be gay. I would say we've now jumped the shark of gay in mainstream, and now we've gone to something much different. You know, we've gone
Queer
from equality to something really bizarre related to all of the gender identity stuff. But he really wanted kids. And I thought, well, okay, I'm married to somebody who really wants something to live the best life for themselves. Like, am I going to be the person to deny him that? That was one thing. And then the other thing that I wrote about in my first book was that I was on tour with Jordan Peterson. And one of the things that Jordan talked about almost every single night was the need for most people, not everybody, but for most people to live the fully complete life. Part of that is being a parent. And then ultimately part of that is being a grandparent. That it is not to say everybody. There are some people who through their own artistic pursuits or whatever it might be can live a full, good life without that. But almost everybody needs that experience. And I think that's what we inherently know. It's what you're saying to me sort of when you're saying, oh, you know, the free time will disappear, but something else is going to happen. There is something that you, Megyn, know as a parent about the world that I don't know yet. And I think it's probably something worth knowing. That really is the truth.
It's funny because in a way I see, you know, parenthood as a shield against so much of the nonsense that's out there, you know, because if your home life is shorn up, if you're happy there, if you've set it up the way you want it to be set up, very little can really hurt you. It's like, all right, everything on the outside can boil down to dollars and cents, and that can be stressful. I understand. I had a part of my life where that was me too. But you look around, you're going to see those two boys on the couch, let's say when they're, you know, 3 or 5, and they're sitting next to David, and you're watching some stupid TV, or you're showing them some show that you guys both loved at some point, and they're sweet, and ideally they're a little tired. This is really like your children best, just like my dog. If Strudwick's tired, he's amazing. Anyway, and you think, I am good. I'm good. There's very little, you know, some blogger, some nasty. I know, actually, yeah, my team was pointing out one of your tweets where you were saying, this is the quote, I have a couple hilariously bad hit pieces incoming. One by a, quote, journalist who lied to me about the intentions of the piece, has repeatedly lied to over a dozen people about the story so he could get them on the record, all sending me his requests. So that can cause some kind of stress. It's like you have your book. You don't want some jerk writing a hit piece on you and where he lured your friends into commenting. It's meaningless. I am here to tell you. It's so meaningless, Dave. That hit piece will not affect a single person who is going to buy your book in one way, or who is open-minded to you in one way, shape, or form. I know it just from having lived it so many years. But I also know that, like, when the babes are there, like back to the image of the kids on the couch with David, you're going to be like, write whatever you want. I'm good. You can't hurt me. You know, I always think of the line from Jerry Maguire from the crazy Kelly Preston character. And she's like, you can't hurt me, Jerry. I'm too strong for you. That's you and the world when you have kids and you've, quote, centered them, to borrow the woke left's term. But like you really have, you centered your life around family, around meaning, around what really will sustain you in the dark hours, not all the BS. And it's not to say there's no meaning without the children. It's just next level when they're there.
You know, it's funny. I could say I think you're right, but I know you're right. like that. And I think that was Jordan's point when he was saying this about people having that need to end up living a life that is truly full to get to that. It's like, I can listen to you say that, and intellectually I can say, well, that sounds right, but it's not really what I'm thinking right now. I know you are right. I know that is what the complete life is. It is something so innately human that we all sort of know that. And that isn't to say that there isn't a part of me that right now, as our first child will be born in August, I'm kind of like, oh man, we got to have all the fun we can and have all the crazy nights. Not that we do anything crazy. I usually fall asleep watching Seinfeld at 10:30, but like I just got to get out there and do everything I can when I want so that I'm not always having to take a nap because everyone keeps telling me how tired I'm going to be.
But I know when people say that. Like you've got to store up your sleep.
I know that you're right.
So you got to store up your sleep or store up your fun. Like, that's how life works. People always say when you're pregnant with a baby, like, make sure you sleep now. It's like, is that how sleep works? Can I bank it? I can
I think you can bank it. I think you can bank it.
I don't think so. All right. So I get it and I support it and I'm very excited for you guys. And I'm going to have to think about what I should put in. Like when Julie Banderas had her baby at Fox, I had just had mine. So I put her together like the best new mother basket because I had just been through it. And it was like the F Factor diet, which I love. Poor Tanya Zuckerberg took a beating from some woman who wrote mean stuff about her in the press too. But I love that diet. It works. Some exercise videos that I liked, DVDs. It was so on and so forth. I knew exactly the liquor she liked. Anyway. So now I got to think about you guys because you don't have to lose the weight. Oh, I gave her like these nipple covers. You don't have to worry about that. So in some ways, you're going to get a lot of the blessings
liquor I
without
like, and I'll take the nipple covers. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but they could probably double up as something else. It rains a lot in Florida. I don't know. They could clog a leak or something. I have no idea. Figure out something.
That's a good point to pivot for a moment to the unpleasant reaction by some. I think overwhelmingly it's been nice and supportive and loving. But I have noticed that there's kind people like Allie Beth Stuckey, who's Christian. I know you're friends with her. And she said, I talked to Dave before I did this piece online to tell you that I don't support this because but she believes in biblical marriage and she doesn't believe, two guys should be having a baby together, that kind of thing. I thought she came from a place of kindness and love and just offered a thoughtful comment on it because her audience kind of expected her to, and she had things she wanted to say. Then there's mean people who write something like, quote, "This is evil. This is evil, plain and simple. They paid for the creation of roughly 18 unique individual human beings just so that 2 of them could be successfully implanted in rented wombs and delivered to their purchasers." To make it sound so it's like, this is so... My friend Melissa Francis, she talked about it on my show. She got a surrogate. She had a blood issue that almost killed, she would say, 2 of her first 2 children when she delivered them. So on baby number 3, she got a surrogate. The surrogates can play an important role. Why should gays and lesbians not have the joys of passing on that love? The biggest losers in our country can have babies. Like the biggest do nothing, awful losers who are hateful, murderous, criminal creeps can get together and have a baby. And nobody says boo. But if it's 2 guys or if it's 2 women, we have to say that's bull. So anyway, your thoughts.
No. Well, first off, I totally appreciate you bringing this up. Look, 99% of what we got those couple days after we posted that picture was love, believe it or not. The funny thing about the internet, it has really dysregulated us in a crazy way. So basically everyone that I'm publicly associated with or that I've had on my show that has any meaning to me, or certainly anyone that I'm friends with privately, we got endless amounts of love. There were some people like Allie Beth who expressed her own personal religious opinion, which, by the way, I completely am okay with. I respect religious liberty. She's entitled to her own belief, and I'm not asking her to marry a woman and have kids with that woman. So that's just fine. What I don't want is someone's personal religious beliefs infringing on my own personal liberty. And we can talk further about the tensions between those 2 things, because I think that there are some tensions there. But the funny thing is, the way the internet works is, Megyn, if we put this video up and it gets 1 million views, 990,000 people watch it and they don't do anything. They don't comment. They just watch it. And maybe they watch the entire thing, or maybe they watch 10 seconds or whatever. And maybe they agreed with us, maybe they didn't, but we don't know, because all we know is that they watched. What happens because of the comments is the 10,000 people who comment generally comment something more angry or not resentful. It's some sort of conflict that they want to comment on, right? And then they know that the way the algorithms work and to get clicks, the crazier you write, the more upvotes you're going to get and the rest of it. And then the average person goes to that video a week later and sees the video and they go, boy, look at this video. It got 1 million views and all the comments are negative. Boy, there's really something brewing here. That wasn't the reality that we faced at all. That's not to say there weren't negative comments. There were. And again, I believe people can have their own personal religious liberty and come from things from a different perspective than I do. But I would also say that you make a really good point that, virtually anyone, any heterosexual couple can have kids literally off a one-night stand, and we don't have to go into the litany of horrible things that children can be born into, whether it's a crack-addicted kid or an abusive father or a negligent mother or just all of the imaginable and I would say unimaginable things that can happen. That isn't to say that I don't think, and David doesn't think, that the role of the mother is vitally important, and families can still look a little bit different and be perfectly good and functioning. We're going to have David's mom move down with us for a couple months. His sister is going to move down here, who has been a nanny for young toddlers, young children before. My sister, who I was talking about before, just moved to Miami. She's actually pregnant with her third right now, due the day before our first is born. So we are going to have, my mom's going to be down as much as possible. So we're going to have strong women and strong female influences to teach us some of this stuff. And then some of this is also related to gender roles, which are real. There are men, generally men like things and women like people. But there are men who are very nurturing and there are women who are not very nurturing. David happens to be very nurturing. I don't know that I'm going to be the most nurturing, but we're going to try to fill in all of those pieces and create the happiest, most loving, safest, because I think that's what you want to create, not a safe space, but a safe place for your child to thrive and grow up to be the best as possible. But I'm not saying it's not a little different and a little weird. And by the way, I don't have a lot of models for this. I've really only one or two sets of friends that are gay that have kids. And we're going to try to learn a little bit from them, but I don't need to learn from gay parents. I can learn from straight parents, and we're going to do the best that we can.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great. I do think, having a role model is important, right? Like that's one of the things I like about being in my marriage with Doug, male, female, obviously, is, they get different things from him than they get from me, but we're not totally like traditional on our gender roles either. You know what I mean? Like obviously I've got this more public facing career where I don't think I've said before, I know Doug doesn't mind me saying I'm the primary wage earner in the relationship. I wasn't always. When I met him, I borrowed money off of him. I couldn't move into my New York City apartment. They needed first month and last month and security department. I didn't have it.
They get you. They get you in New York.
They get you. It was a lot. Anyway, so back then I was borrowing money from him, but whatever. My point is like non-traditional now currently in that way. It works. It's fine. I like the idea of bringing in strong women just so that these young boys then have the model. They can see there it is. And you get different things from a nurturing mom than you get from a nurturing dad. So I think that's a good workaround. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.